Yep. All right. Well, welcome to In This Together, workforce support for emerging training needs during a global pandemic. It's a lot to say, but 2020 has been a lot. So no surprise there that we'd come up with the longest title ever for our workshop. So if you're here today, we're going to be presenting on behalf of our agency and sharing with all of you some of the training packages that we have developed in response to COVID-19 in order to support the workforce in doing new and different aspects of their job. So the idea here is that we want to do a panel discussion, and we want it to be as interactive as the virtual environment will allow for. So sort of a grand experiment, and we'll find out along the way how best to incorporate all of your voices. But we want to just let you know that it's our intention that you're able to jump in either through the chat box or by unmuting yourself eventually and being able to interact with all of us. So we are here today on behalf of our agency, which is WCW PDS, or Wisconsin Child Welfare Professional Development System. We are inside of the University of Wisconsin-Madison as well as Milwaukee, and there are 5 of us here today representing our agency. So my name is Serena Brining, and I am the I'm the Applied Professional Development Coordinator. Again, a lot of words. And I'll say a little bit about the program that I coordinate later on in our time together. But I will turn it over to my colleagues so they can introduce themselves and join the conversation.
Hi, I'm Kim Ethan. I'm the Special Initiatives Coordinator at the Wisconsin Child Welfare Professional Development System. And so I help out when there are things that go above and beyond our training needs when the Department of Children and Families wants to start something new.
Thanks, Kim, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jen Gundry, and I am the Learning Management System Administrator for WCW PDS. And today I'm going to share information about the instructional design and technology used for our project.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Smith, and I am the Safety Curriculum Manager at WCW PDS. So I work with things all related to safety training for both staff and supervisors, as well as with Serena with the Applied Learning Communities, the ALCs. And my role, I'll talk a little bit today, and the support that I provided in the development of the 3 training packages related to the assessment of child safety.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Darren Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Child Welfare Professional Development System. My role in the organization has morphed a lot over the years. I just happen to be in this seat right now. I've been involved with organizational improvement projects, the special initiatives thing, the technology, our learning management system, lots of different pieces of it. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about stakeholder engagement potentially, or anywhere else that people want to go and talk about kind of how we ended up dealing with the virtual world resulting from the pandemic. So thank you.
All right. So we'd like to invite you all in to participate in the conversation now. We know you come from a lot of different disciplines yourselves, and we're curious to hear from you from the start of the pandemic. From the start of the pandemic, what is it that you feel like you have learned most in your work environment? Please select all that apply. All right, so it's looking like everybody, for the most part, is selecting that we've learned how to adapt to the work. Then we've got others who are saying that in addition to that, or separate from that, you've found that you can come together as an agency, opportunity to learn new skills, maybe surprised a little bit about what it looks like to do collaboration from a distance, and also possibly a little bit of partnering with different people at your agencies for a few of you. So we'll go ahead and end that. Thank you for participating. We wanted to see that because similar to all of you who mostly selected the I learned how to be adaptable at work, we too can relate to that. And in fact, we found that in our work together, we were able to experience all of these things. And it's our hope that as we talk today, we'll be able to touch on a few of those aspects of the work that we did. So the idea here is that for our time, we want to be able to describe to you what it is that we did with these 3 training packages in order to help people with their emerging training needs. So it's a little different. We're not here to talk about how PDS adapted existing training to the virtual environment, because although we did that as an agency, the content here is about the training we developed essentially under our feet in order to meet the emerging training needs that the workforce had, specific to things like, how do we do virtual contacts? We've never done that before in our field. And now suddenly we're having to do that in a minute's notice. And what does that look like to do it with confidence and competence? And so that's what we're here today to talk about, is how we approach that, that learning experience for the workforce. We'll discuss along the way strategies that we used to identify the learner's needs, as well as the tools that we offered to support them. So expect to hear all of that in our time together. Again, really wanting to engage you all in a conversation. We know you've done your own innovative and creative work under your feet in response to this. And so we see this as a supplement to the work you're already doing. And it's our hope that if there are things we've developed and that you can borrow from, that is taken back to your jurisdictions and adapted as it may be helpful. So the idea here is that we want to give you enough information about what these 3 training packages are in the beginning of our time, so that once we open it up to a conversation amongst ourselves, that you have enough information to work with to know what kind of questions you want to ask and where you can get the best information to help support your needs for your particular jurisdictions. So with that, I'm going to start talking about these 3 training packages. And before I do, I'll just set the stage here. So similar to all of you, I imagine you got this email in your inbox. And when I say this email, it's the one that you got from your boss. In my case, it was Darren, who's on the call with us, just saying, all right, time to pack up and head home. And who knows how long you'll be there, but stay tuned, more to come, right? And so this email came to us on March 11th. I believe it was a Wednesday. And little did we know it was going to be 6 months later that we still are working from home and making this all work for us, similar to all of you and the staff that you work alongside and for. And so after we got this email, it just sort of set things in motion, right? It felt like there was one fire after the other that we were putting out. And at this point, 6 months in, like you, I imagine, we have ashes that we're now even sifting through from the fires that we've been putting out. And it feels like we're constantly dealing with something new, right? And it feels like it's shifting underneath us. And so we have developed these trainings we're about to share with you in this context of really just trying to work and keep our wits about us, just like you. So with that in mind, we took 2 phrases that we used to really ground ourselves in the work we developed, and we'll share them with you here first on the screen. It was sort of a mantra of sorts, and it was secure your own mask first. And the second mantra that we used to ground our work was, you got this. And so these 2 mantras really serve to establish us in our direction and how we talk to the workforce. And we have to say that similar to that phrase, in this together, they can be sort of trite, right? And so the idea is we really had to put our money where our mouth was, so to speak, or walk the talk, in other words. And so hopefully by the end of our time here today, you'll see how we worked alongside the workforce to help them to secure their masks so that they could continue to do the good work that they were trained and equipped to do, while also adjusting and realizing that they still have it. They still have reason to be confident in their roles and in their responsibilities, even though so much of that was being adjusted. And so with that, I'll dive right into sharing with you those 3 training packages. As I share, please feel free to drop any sort of questions you have into the chat box. My colleagues will be paying attention to that and can certainly stop me at any point in time so that we can address that. Otherwise, if you prefer to save those questions, again, we'll make time for you to, you all as participants, to determine the direction we go with this presentation after I've covered the 3 training packages. All right. So we did 3 training packages in a total of 5 months. So for all of you who've done curriculum development and delivery, you know that that's sort of unheard of, right? We definitely put a lot of extra hours in to make all of this happen. Certainly we knew that it was aligned with our mission and vision, and that inspired us throughout. But it really was pretty exceptional that we were able to accomplish this, and it would not have been possible if we didn't work as a team to make all of this happen. So for the first training package, this one was developed in an effort to create a training for the scenario in which a child welfare agency has community outbreak and their child protection staff is no longer available to do their duties in person, either because they have contracted the virus or they've been exposed to it. And so essentially the agency is then thrown into crisis in response to this outbreak, and they now are in a position where they have to start looking to other staff at their agency, for example, folks in economic support or adult protective services, and they're having to say, hey, can you step in and can I delegate some of the tasks that a child welfare worker would otherwise do because they're not available right now. And so this training was requested by the Department of Children and Families, and it had a turnaround time of 2 weeks. And so what this included in the end is 9 30-minute asynchronous modules, and they're available on demand on our webpage. And there are 15 on-demand job aids that accompany those modules and supplement the learning. And we went ahead and made all of the content, both the modules as well as the job aids, available on smartphones, either through the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, so that those individuals who are being called upon to jump in and help out are able to easily access the material, knowing that it's likely outside their scope of understanding and knowledge, and that they're really just doing this on the fly, so to speak. So Jen's gonna start sharing her screen. She's gonna take us to the webpage where these products are housed. They all are public facing, and so anybody would be able to access these and take a deeper dive into the content and see for yourself where these products possibly have alignment with your own agency's purposes. So I'll turn it over to Jen, and she's going to share with us a little bit about how we approach this project in such a short amount of time from an instructional design perspective.
Thanks, Serena. So we utilized a modified backward design approach, which really meant we didn't focus on the breadth of content, but really focused on the essential skills needed for non-CPS workers to do non-emergency CPS tasks. And as you can see from some of the topics here, and I'll scroll down here so you have a sense. These in themselves are topics that are usually 2-day trainings for our new workers, our new CPS workers. So you can imagine it's quite a task to narrow these down to 20 to 30-minute modules. So we really had to focus on the big ideas and skills that were essentials. And Serena? And Serena, you are on mute.
Unmute. You have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, look at that teamwork. All right, so part of what was challenging about this project from a curriculum development perspective is that it was a different audience than whom we usually speak to. As an agency responsible for the professional development of child welfare professionals, this was outside our scope in terms of audience, and so we had to spend quite a bit of time in a short time frame thinking about how we responsibly talk about these duties and what somebody could reasonably be asked to do and what they would need to know in order to complete that, especially when that's not their primary responsibility at the agency. And so we did have to grapple with some challenging concepts and notions in that process, one of which was child safety. And how do we really tackle this idea that a non-child welfare professional would be going about doing duties on behalf of someone who's responsible typically for assessing safety? And what if this individual misses something or stumbles upon a gap that ends up proving to be really detrimental to a family? And so I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she'll speak a little bit about how we address this challenge in the curriculum development.
Sounds good. I think, Srini, like you said, you really hit it. The high point is our concern about giving them information that they could complete the tasks that they were going to be doing on behalf of CPS. But knowing that there were some things that they were not equipped and that we did not have the ability to prepare them to be equipped to do. So for instance, we have safety training that's very focused and intense that provide staff the skills and the knowledge to be able to assess child safety, we were not going to have the ability to do that for anybody who might be a designee. So really the first two modules that we created were more around orienting the designee to the CPS process in that decision making. And we wanted to provide that to them before they were given more specifics about the tasks that they might be asked to complete on behalf of CPS. And so it was really important for us to be able to lay the foundation for what it meant to be a designee, and to really clarify that designee role and how they were going to operate in conjunction with the agency supervisor. So in essence, we approached it that they were acting on behalf of CPS, kind of their proxy through the eyes and ears of CPS. And so when it came to the issue of child safety and making decisions and understanding whether or not kids were safe, that's not a responsibility or a task that we felt could be handed over to them. And so what we did is that we tried to put our focus and attention on giving them some supports and some job aids to help them know what would be dangerous, what could they keep their eyes out. So we developed some job aids around red flags. So if they were to be out in a home and working with a family or talking with a family and meeting with them, what could they kind of keep their eye out? That if they saw these things, it might be an indication of danger and would be kind of their red light, their indication to connect back with the agency supervisor for further direction and decision making. And so there's the red flags that we came up with, danger. And we've got different kinds of tips throughout all of the trainings that kind of says, and here's really what you should be communicating to the agency and when you should be communicating to the agency if there's a concern about an emergency. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Amy. So that is training package number 1, and we refer to it as Know Your Role because that is the title of the 9 modules, and then each of them have their own subtitles. So like we said, this was developed within a 2-week period. It required everybody basically from our agency to drop everything and be available to help contribute to its development and eventual launch.
Serena, before you move on to the next one, there's a question in the chat that hopefully Jen Gundry can answer here, and that is, what is the platform that is being used to house these modules?
So we did not put it behind a learner management system because we wanted to make these materials as accessible as possible. So we put it on our website, and we used Articulate 360 to do the design and development for those. And thank you for the question.
Yes, please keep them coming. So we'll move on then to training package number 2 of 3. The second training package is referred to as the Applied Learning Communities. So this is an existing training model that we use at our agency, and the model itself is used to bring together cohorts of learners around a particular practice issue or topic, and to get their input as agency teams into this particular topic area. And we essentially study the topic together, and then we provide feedback to leaders both at a local level as well as a state level around this particular topic and how it's experienced at a practice level. And so, for example, in 2019 at the Applied Learning Communities, we studied the issue of case transitions and what that looked like. And so we invited agency teams of our assessment teams as well as our ongoing service teams to come together under the leadership of one of their agency supervisors to study this topic and to explore its implementation, and then provide feedback on where policy is not necessarily aligned with real life practice. And so for 2020, we were on deck to be exploring the topic of access, which is essentially our hotline function in Wisconsin. And so we were going to be looking at how to take CPS reports and how to look at documentation and engagement with the reporter and analysis of the information, that type of thing. When this happened, we were just ready to get going with those cohorts, and that all got put on hold. And we, at the very last minute, decided to pivot and table our topic for the 2020 year, and instead take on this new topic that was impacting the majority of the workforce, which was, how do we do these virtual contacts? So we know that the area of medicine as well as mental health has started to dabble in health and contacts over time. But for child welfare professionals, this was a brand new experience for them. The only experience some professionals had had is doing video visits with incarcerated parents. And so to move towards doing aspects of contacts throughout the assessment process or ongoing services was worrisome to a lot of the workforce. Much like your workforce, I imagine ours was worried that they'd be missing information, that children might be harmed because of it. It could result in egregious or serious incidents, that type of thing. And so we decided in the beginning of May to use this existing ALC training model to explore this new training need around virtual contacts. And so as a result of that, we ended up offering a series of sessions to enrolled participants where each week we explored this topic of virtual contacts. And so in total, we were able to offer 5 virtual synchronous sessions 5 times for the different regions throughout the state. And we also used an online discussion forum through the University of Wisconsin-Madison that allowed participants to engage in community as well as the topic in an asynchronous way outside of the session. And this forum was really nice for us to be able to use as a supplement to the in-person sessions because it allowed for people to, like I said, start to build that community, which was really a critical need that the workforce was having because so many of them were like us. They were told by their bosses, go home, pack up, go home and stay there indefinitely and stay tuned. And that meant for a lot of the workforce, their caseload remained, and yet they were now in isolation. They didn't have the contact of their supervisor or their colleagues right down the hallway. And so they were left to sort of figure this all out on their own. And so what the discussion forum allowed for is for them to start communicating with one another and to start talking about what stresses they had been experiencing in this new environment, as well as start to move towards topics about the actual practice itself and to borrow from one another in their use of different strategies for engagement and the like. And so it proved to be a really successful component of this applied learning community experience. In addition to the in-person sessions in the discussion forum, we also offered participants a practice handbook. And this practice handbook is really dense. It's 140 pages, and it includes lots of different materials to support them in their use of virtual contacts. And many of these tools or supplements are ones that people could use both in the virtual environment or in person with a family. So they have this enduring quality where they will continue to be beneficial to folks after this pandemic subsides and virtual contacts are no longer relied upon in the same ways. So to show you a little bit about what you could expect from this handbook, this is just the cover page. It's all available on the ALC webpage. We'll share with you all of the URLs to each of these products that we're highlighting before you leave here today. So you can certainly dive into these. And if you find anything that would be useful to you or your staff, by all means, you're more than welcome to use it. Here's an example of one of the pages in the handbook. This one specifically is looking at how to build rapport with children during virtual contacts, and it's broken down into ideas based on the developmental age of the child. So we had heard a lot of feedback in our early needs assessment that people were just really struggling to just dive right into these personal sensitive topics when they weren't necessarily having this nice warm up to the discussion with the child. So this includes fun things like, you know, the use of different movements that they can do with the child, or the introduction of simple things like a paper bag with questions in it and the workers pulling it out and reading it to the child, all in an effort to begin that early engagement. So I imagine you all have ideas like that for how you've supported staff. And if you want to drop some of those in the chat box so others can see, you're more than welcome to do that. The idea here is we want to be able to facilitate some collaboration and get the word out about good ways to engage virtually. So another tool that we included in this handbook is one that was developed by a Wisconsin social worker in her work with families prior to the pandemic. It's really simple, and it only requires a simple pen and paper. The idea here is that you just draw a very large circle and then a small circle inside, and the information inside the larger circle is all of what the child or the adult knows, and everything the child welfare person knows can be represented by that very small dot. So it's the idea that you're quickly conveying that the other person is the expert and that they have a lot of information that will better help situate what's known to the child welfare professional. So it's a way to center the family, to center the individual you're talking to, and to respectfully gather more information. And the nice thing about this is that we also provided instructions for the child welfare staff on how to use the whiteboard function in Zoom so that they could also draw these two dots on the whiteboard and be able to engage the participant using these materials virtually. So you see here on the next slide that with this tool, we also demonstrated the use of it with a 12-year-old named Jackson, who had recently experienced a dangerous situation in his own life, and that was separate from a CPS concern. And his parents were willing to have him do an interview using this tool to demonstrate how that might be used virtually. And so this, you see Jackson here on this screen using this tool, and it just provided an opportunity for participants to just see someone else use it and to sort of demystify the challenges around its use. And so that was a part of what we did in one of the ALC sessions. All right, so that was training package number 2. I'll pause here. I see that Jen has been able to enter some of the URLs to these different products into the chat box. Are there any questions that I should pause for? Looking to...
There was a question, Serena, about how we tracked people who were using these modules.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I had mentioned earlier, so the modules for training package 1 was not put behind the learner management system because we wanted to make it accessible as possible. So the only real analytics data we can get from that is from, hits to the website. So there was this balance about putting it behind the learner management system or not. If our CPS workers wanted to utilize that on their training transcript in PDS Online, they could enter it as an external training to do that. And for the training package 2 and 3, those were both registered on our LMS, so that came up on their transcript. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
All right, thanks, Jen. So this brings us to training package number 3, and this actually came out of an idea that folks at the county agency level had. So after participating in the ALCs, we'll talk about what our needs assessment process looked like. And what we learned out of one aspect of the needs assessment is that the agency supervisors who attended training package number 2 were saying that, wow, this would be really great for us to be able to share more broadly at our agency. What would it look like for us to open up, what would it look like for us to expand the learning where we took aspects of the handbook and we demonstrated the use of these different tools on a regular basis, and we allowed staff to take in new learning about how to use the tool, and then they left and practiced on their own, and then came back later in the month to share out what their experience was. And so essentially what they were describing to us was a collaborative of sorts, and we put our minds together and came up with what we're referring to as training package number 3, the learning collaboratives. These are currently in progress, and they launched back in August. And the model is basically what I already described, but to be more specific about it, once a month, enrolled participants attend a session on the first Thursday of the month, and one of the tools in the handbook is spotlighted, and we do a live demonstration with either children or adults, depending on who it's relevant to, and then we provide structure around how the learners can go about implementing that same tool in their practice in the next 2 weeks. And then over that 2-week period of time, they implement it and they come back on the third Thursday for another virtual contact with us where they share out in a structured way what they learned and experienced. and they are able to get peer coaching as well as coaching and consultation from us, where we help to support their further use of this tool. It's also an opportunity for folks to come together again in the spirit of community and to be able to say, you know, I know the tool was essentially hitting on this high note, and this is what it was intended to help us gather. I didn't necessarily use this tool. Instead, I made adjustments to it, or I came up with an idea on my own that I could use, and it's an opportunity for them to then share that with their peers and to spread the wealth, right, of their own ingenuity and their own creativity. So for training package number 3, it ends in December, and by that time it will have included 10 virtual synchronous sessions where we apply the handbook tools, and we then again receive that feedback from one another. So you'll see here on these slides, this is what we presented to folks who are enrolled in August. We featured the 3 Houses tool, which is a tool that can help, can be used virtually, either using pen and paper, or again, the use of the whiteboard and Zoom, which is our preferred platform in Wisconsin. We also demonstrated in September the My Safety House, which again is a simple diagram, and it's a tool. It's not one we developed, but it is one that we used, and it includes that simple sketch, and there's different structure around it, and each of these shapes you see in the diagram have a particular purpose and are intended to gather specific information to support the inclusion of the child's perspective in safety planning. And so these are just 2 examples of what we used in the Learning Collaborative. All right. So with that, we want to just take a minute here and open it up to everyone and get your opinion about what you would like to hear more about. So this isn't a panel discussion where we can pass the microphone around and hear from everyone, but we still have tools that can replicate the microphone. So you have your literal unmute button that you could certainly select so that you can unmute and ask a question yourself. You could do that in the chat box. And we also want to just generally see where the most interest is at before we jump into any of that. So Jen is going to put another quiz on the in front of you, and it will be asking you what you would most like to talk about next. So we have topics here like stakeholder engagement, needs assessment. Looks like someone's already selected evaluation. We can cover the technology we used and the products and tools in a little bit more depth. So we'll go with the top 2 choices to guide the next portion of our presentation. And I'll give it a couple more minutes just for folks to enter in their top 2 choices. It's looking like sustaining motivation is at the top. Technology is a close second. All right, Jen, whenever you're ready to show the results.
Okay, I'm not sure if everyone can see the results, but we have sustaining motivation, 47%, and technology with 31%.
Okay.
Evaluation is a third if we have time.
Okay, great. So we will, so for those of you who selected sustaining motivation, we know that you probably had specific questions in mind about what grabbed your curiosity around that. So go ahead and either start formulating that question and get ready to unmute yourself, or go ahead and enter it in the chat box. As you think about that, Amy's going to say a little bit about how we did sustain motivation throughout the project, and then we'll address questions at the end.
Sounds good. Thanks, Serena. Motivation, I think, was a really interesting aspect of this. As Serena said, it came really fast, and the need to, and we've had to sustain it over the 6-month period of time. And many of us at the professional development system transitioned from direct CPS practice into this world of professional development and thought we had left crisis work behind us. I think often folks in the training world will laugh and joke, there's no such thing as a training emergency, but that really kind of seemed to prove a little bit wrong for us when the pandemic hit and there were requests for immediate training needs to support the workforce. And I think it became additionally challenging as we thought about how to provide this in our new virtual environment that we're all working in. And so when we were thinking about this issue of sustaining motivation, and it was something that I think we thought about purposefully, we really considered and planned of it from two angles. One from both the learner and the participant side, as well as the development and provision side. So when we thought about it with learners, one of the things that we did right away was look at this needs assessment and trying to understand not only what was most needed, but what was going to be most salient to the work that was being done. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that needs assessment, more specifics about how it was done and what information was gathered. But we wanted to make sure that the information that we provided in the training supports was going to be applicable to what they needed in immediate time. And as Serena showed you with some of the materials in the handbook, we really wanted to make sure that we also developed materials that were ready on demand and could be used easily, readily, and ongoing. So when we think about the know your role, right, we developed those job aids that were not only for the designee, but also had, I think, application and applicability to CPS staff in the field. So those were things that tangible things people could take to support them in continuing the work, as well as the handbook. And then we provided different kinds of opportunities for them to have exposure to them, for them to have some demonstration that they saw, for them then to have time to practice, and them to then come back and get feedback. And I think one of the critical parts of that was also thinking about balancing it with the time that the workforce had. So we have this new level of emergency, I think, or pressure that the workforce was feeling, not only in their work, but in their professional lives, right? Lots of people immediately became at-home teachers for their children. So trying to figure out, how am I juggling doing my work as a CPS worker and now being a teacher for my second and third grader? And so we knew that it was likely that folks would not have the ability to sit in 6-hour training sessions. So we looked at how we could provide this training in maybe more of kind of snippets or in shorter segments. So a lot of the ALCs were done in smaller chunks of time and opportunity for people to be able to participate. They didn't have to worry about setting aside an entire day to get information. The other thing is that we wanted to make sure that they were standalone. So it wasn't that you had to sign on for a series of things for fear that one day wouldn't meet, so you'd be ineligible for the entire learning. So all of the learning is individual. You wouldn't have had to have gone to one to get to the next topic or subject matter. So that made it more accessible. And then we also taped some of the demonstrations. So people would have the opportunity to go back and to look at, even if they had participated in the first place. Maybe they wanted to go back and hear again and think about maybe some tips or tricks of how to use a tool, or get some feedback or ideas that other people had shared on things that they had attempted to use and that would be helpful to them. So all of those kinds of things came together, and really I think our main focus was making whatever training and supports that we provided as accessible and immediately applicable as possible. Okay. So, and I think that's proved to be true. We keep seeing people show up time after time as it's gone on with the learning collaboratives. So then we had this issue about sustaining motivation with staff, right? So those were the folks, our internal staff, who had to jump up in a really short time frame and develop all of this. And I can't stress enough and emphasize enough, I think, the importance of agency culture, about creating and supporting a culture that shares the same mission, the same values, and the same goals. Because I think it was really within that context that we saw lots of emails, and Darren can talk about that, coming into him as the director saying, I know you're working on this. What can I do? What do you need? Here's what I can do. If you think there's something else I can do, I'm happy to learn and try. So what was really interesting is that while we have folks with a very wide variety of skills and interests, there were also people saying, I've never done this before, but I'm happy to do it. And I think a great example is our colleague Kim, who's here on the phone. Kim just happened to have a Zoom account. And it was because of Kim that we started doing everything via Zoom. She and Jen Gundry really took the lead to figure out what Zoom was, how to use it. And in no time flat, we were holding meetings, we were holding trainings, and providing it in that virtual format from people who just picked it up and learned it. And I think that kind of approach, because we really have a learning environment in our organization about try and succeed, but even better, try and fail, because from those failures are things that you're going to learn, and you're going to be able to try something different and do it better next time. And I think because that's how we really show up, that we were able to use, it was a very authentic way that which we come, we were able to use that in the learning collaboratives. So Serena, being a very brave pioneer, said, I'm going to try some of these tools. They're not tools I've ever tried before. I've looked at them, I've learned about them, maybe I've heard them, and I'm going to try them. And you know what? I'm probably not going to do them perfect every time, and that's okay. And really all it was about was having exposure to maybe some new tools, some new resources to support you in the work you're doing, to try them, to share what worked well, to share how maybe you did something different. And so I think that vulnerability that our staff show really creates a lot of trust among ourselves and as well as among our participants. And I think is just a really great way that we engage the workforce, engage each other to keep trying things. And I think that because we have that trust in our organization, it really creates that space to try different things. And it's really energizing. I'm sure folks who have experience in a similar kind of organization is that creativity and that wanting to join, to me, just like breeds more and more and more. When you see somebody who's doing something well and it's exciting and it's fun, then you see more people jumping on and pitching in. And that's really, I think, what happened. I think also as an organization, we do a really good job to make sure that we acknowledge that. So whether it be at meetings where we do shout outs or emails to each other, I think our leadership team does a really great job as well when they get information and feedback from our partners from DCF or from the counties with appreciation and acknowledgement of the work, that's always kind of funneling back in, which once again, just really kind of fuels that desire to do more. It's kind of like a candy addiction, sugar. Once you get some, you want to get some more, right? Because it's really fun and you're seeing the usefulness of it. And I think that's really true from our entire organization. While we have lots of folks who might do things as putting materials together, entering information into a database, we do at our organization something that I kind of akin it to connect to purpose. So when we have meetings, we make sure that different parts of the organization are highlighted so that everybody knows what the different components and parts of our organization are doing. And as part of that, they're able to connect back to purpose, what it is that they do, how it achieves our goal and purpose of providing professional development, training, and support to the child welfare workforce so that they are best equipped to do the job that they do. So I think it's really kind of just this nice big cycle that's helped us sustain that. Any questions or anything specific anybody had about that?
I'm looking at it. I don't see anything yet. That doesn't mean that you can't still enter anything. If you have something to add in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, we can wait for a few seconds here just to give people an additional chance to chime in. Otherwise, we'll move on to the technology topic.
Here's a little technical glitch. I'll pull something up for you.
No, I can just kneel here. Hey, sorry, my microphone's broke. I was trying to change it out there and it wouldn't let me, and I apologize for that. And so I just wanted to jump in really, really quickly. I know stakeholder engagement got almost 0 votes, and that made me a little sad, but that's okay. Because one of the things I was going to say during the stakeholder engagement piece was how important it was to make sure that your staff, that the internal staff, that staff that were going to be actually doing the work, felt engaged and felt motivated on this project and all of these projects, to be very honest with you. Just like everybody else, I'm sure when we got sent home and we started working out of the office on March 12th, we were trying to figure out, how am I going to do my job? How's training going to keep happening? Really kind of focused internally on that. And so from the perspective of the Department of Children and Families, who's our primary funder, they have a crisis response team that I became part of almost immediately, and they were really worried about how are the line workers, how are the end workers going to maintain the child welfare services they're required statutorily to go ahead and keep doing. And so when we had a role in that, which became, again, immediately, almost within a couple of days, being able to go back to our team who were all worried about their own roles and what it was going to look like and present, we need to work on this. This is something we can all get together and we can work on as a team. And one of the things from our organization, we always talk about, we succeed together and we fail together. And so the team atmosphere is substantial. And so this was almost everybody in our organization. Obviously, we had instructional designers, we had curriculum developers, we had subject matter experts, we had audio video people, we had support staff. Everybody was doing this. And so it really was a wonderful opportunity for us as a professional development system to get engaged to everything else that was going on externally. And our staff stepped up, which I absolutely knew they would. Our staff stepped up immediately. And I don't call individual people out, but I asked Serena first day, would you lead this project out? She said yes, and did just an absolutely phenomenal job of it. So I just wanted to piggyback on that, since we're not going to talk about engaging stakeholders, that if you're involved with something like this, don't forget your internal people. They're vitally important to the success of all this. And ultimately, like I said, the WCW PDS team stepped up immediately. So thankfully, Amy and I are in the same locale, so I could jump in here. Don't have a mask on or anything, but that's okay. So ultimately, if there's any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Darren, it looks like we have a question here about how many people in our organization.
It's an interesting question. It should be a simple answer. It's not quite as simple as I would like. We currently have two major offices. One's located at UW-Madison, which is where all five of us work, and one's located at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, which we have a secondary bunch of. So both two organizations together, we're in the process of combining into a singular training system, have about 60 employees. The Madison office has about 38 employees. So, and again, going just a little further, that out of those 38 employees, I would bet at least 30 were directly involved with these projects that Serena's talking about right now, or that we outlined, the training packages.
And we have another question here too as well. We have training that was more than one day at a time prior to COVID-19.
I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question, Jen? You broke up just a second.
Did you have training that was more than one day at a time prior to COVID-19?
I think that question might be to the know your role stuff. And I think, as was said, those 9 modules, which cover a variety of different areas that non-CPS workers may be required to perform, most of those were standalone trainings that we were delivering face-to-face before. The safety training that Amy talked a little bit about, that's 3 full days with present and impending danger. And again, one of the challenges right away as we developed the work plan is how we're going to make that happen. We identified who's our subject matter expert, or who do we have on our staff that's best able to take the current curriculum that we have, multi-day face-to-face curriculum, and reduce that down to a 30-minute module that's going to be something that most people can understand and can be a resource going out there. So that was a challenge. There were lots of people. I will just tell you, the immediate response was, there is absolutely no way that we can make this a 30-minute module and anybody get anything out of it. But again, they persevered, and I think we did a really, really nice job. And I'd encourage anybody on here to go ahead and pop into those modules. Again, they were done fast. We created all 9 of those in less than 2 weeks. And so they might not be as polished as for example, our pre-service stuff, but Jen and another individual, Colin, did a fantastic job in recording. We used our own, the voices you hear are our own staff, so we used all of that stuff to make that happen. But again, the product, I think, ended up really good. And I think, as Amy said, we got lots of accolades and lots of positives from the counties, from the Department of Children and Families. Those came to us at a leadership team level and me in my county meetings and stuff. But that stuff all got passed down to the staff that actually did the work and were the ones that were kind of making this actually happen in the manner that they did. So again, stakeholders are important internally too.
And we also have additional training that we provide for the child welfare workforce. So for both caseworkers and supervisors, that we have transitioned over in provision of a virtual platform. So we're continuing to provide our trainings that way for them as well, the ones that we typically have.
We have another question here. What are your thoughts of keeping motivation for classes that may last 13 to 14 weeks? And feel free, if you have other ideas to share, please enter those in chat as well, as we'd love to hear from everybody here and learn from each other.
Really, the only thing that we have in our system that's that long for caseworkers and supervisors, it's a supervisory training. It's called Supervising Safety, and it's a blended synchronous and asynchronous kind of learning. And so for that, the longest one right now is like a 12-week from beginning to end. and that's just 3 face-to-face seminars or meetings, but there are phone calls that we're now doing via Zoom because the technology allows us to do that, so it makes it more personal. And then there's work in between that's done distance-wise. So that's probably like the longest thing that we have, that we've had experience with. And we were in the middle of providing one of those sessions of supervising safety right when the pandemic hit. So we ended up having to do 2 out of the 3 seminars virtually. And it went well, but it's not, I don't know that it's getting at the same question that you're asking in terms of if it's a group of people continuing to go on together week after week. We try and find different kinds of fun things to do in Zoom. We look to some of what we've done, at least in supervising safety, is we took some of the content and developed it into pre-work. So maybe they weren't on for 6 hours, so we're only on for 4 or 5. And so then we use that information, that content, to kind of springboard off during seminar. So we've been really trying to think about what kind of information has to be delivered in a face-to-face context, what can be done outside. And we're doing some of that with some of our foundation, our caseworker foundation trainings as well. So trying to be creative when we can.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy and Darren. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to make sure we get a chance to cover some of the technology. Jen, this is really your wheelhouse. You took a lot of ownership over this. You want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Serena. So feel free to enter any questions into chat. I'd be glad to answer those. I know we have talked about a few of the items already. So let me just here, we're going to skip to our training package 1, which is the Know Your Role. And so with that, we really wanted this goal to bring the resources to the learner, whether they were working from home or, as you can imagine, even working from their car in preparation for a family interview. So we really wanted to make the materials as accessible, and we've talked about that already. There's always this balance between tracking and making it accessible, and we decided to go the route of being more accessible. So these are living on our website as well. When we took on this role or this job to do this in 2 weeks, as you can imagine, we really needed to apply some rapid e-learning techniques. And I know that's defined in many ways, but the definition that I'm using here is that it would be training that's developed in 2 to 3 weeks. The project is led by a subject matter expert, and you use templates and authoring tools for rapid development. And of course, we use common sense, and we really leverage the expertise within our agency and with the university as well. And so the result was 9 20 to 30-minute modules. And we really leveraged the Articulate 360 for 2 reasons. 1, we had the expertise in it, and 2, we could publish it in 2 different types of formats. 1, a video format that could be deployed and integrated into YouTube for the app, and the other an HTML5 or web-based format. So all of our presentations have no interactivity, so they're basic presentations with audio and narration and slides. And this is really important because we needed the audio to really hold up so that it would work with both formats. So a couple of things that we did to do this in 2 weeks, we adapted a look and feel that I was currently working on. So that usually in a project, it might take 2 to 3 days to pick fonts and pick colors, but we did not have that time or privilege to do that. So we adapted something that we had already been using. We finalized the graphics quickly and created a PowerPoint template and distributed that amongst the authors for the modules. And they used that to put the narration in the notes and create the slides as well. We reviewed that narration. We looked for consistency, overlap, and of course, alignment with our desired results or objectives. And we adapted it so it worked on, again, the web-based platform and a video format. And you can see here listed the technology that we use. We use Storyline, we use iStock for images, the PowerPoint, Caption Sync, and YouTube. Looks like we have a question here as well. Was everything done in-house, or did you have services from private providers? Well, we use Caption Sync to do the narration and timing alignment. We use the iStock for videos, but otherwise we did all this in-house. There was 2 instructional designers and many subject matter experts. So typically we also hire voice talent to do this. And as Darren had mentioned, we use in-house. One of our trainer's husband was a weatherman, so he had a great voice. And so we had him from his home record the audio directly into PowerPoint. And what was really great about that is that the audio was already chunked up. And so if he had to repeat the narration on a slide, he could just delete it and re-record it. So we were really able to save a lot of time by doing that. Also, because we had 2 instructional designers working on this project, we had to have discussion amongst ourselves to make sure that we were cohesive, because 2 different instructional designers, even with a template, have their own individual styles. So we made sure that we had discussions doing that as well. And to be really clear, to accomplish this in such a short period of time, this included nights and weekends. I really thought about it as an all hands on deck. And our earlier conversation around motivation was really helpful to be able to align this as an instructional designer, just putting audio in and putting images in, that this could actually help the children of Wisconsin. So that was really important to keep that motivation up as well. Let me just see here. As I had mentioned, here we go. Hopefully you're seeing a slide on our app, and you're able to download this. If you'd like to see it, we'll put the link in here. And we had great experience with using a conference app. We use Whova. It was very successful. And we really imagined like people could be in their car looking up our job aids that we had talked about, maybe the handbook in preparation for doing interviews or doing any kind of site visits. So I'd love to say that I spent days doing research, looking up different type of apps. But this really took about 2 hours. I quickly looked, did a Google search about best training app software, and we landed on Shout'em. And I think it was a really good pick. I think maybe we got a little bit of lucky here, but we were able to use their news template. So we have videos and job aids on our app. And they have a YouTube integration tool. So we use YouTube to upload those presentations as well. And we really leverage the University of Madison app developers, because you needed to have a Google app developer to be able to publish as well as an Apple one. So that was really helpful. And I'm looking at time here. So let me just see here. We get done at 1:45, crew? Okay. So we have our slides. As I said, we, primarily used the Articulate 360. We really leveraged our in-house instructional designers and voice talent. We used Caption Sync, which I love. We used Adobe Premiere to edit those Zoom recordings that we had mentioned, because the feedback was that people wanted to share these videos with their colleagues as well. And we use to do the online discussions. And so that was really helpful. It was the right time to build community, and people really wanted to reach out to each other in this time of COVID. So that was really helpful as well. And Serena, I think those touch the main technology. If you want to take it from here.
Yeah, happy to. So one thing I want to touch on, Jen, is that when you showed that second slide where you talked about digitizing the material, that was, so Jen, we had the Know Your Role modules, but then we also digitized all of the synchronous sessions of the ALCs so that we could be responsive to supervisors who are saying, hey, I didn't have certain staff enroll in the ALCs, but this content would be really helpful for them. Can you produce the technology so that they can see these in recorded format? And Jen went ahead and worked with one of our colleagues in Milwaukee to create products that were edited down and revised so that they had meaning for people who didn't have the context of those sessions. And those two are available on demand on the ALC webpage. And so that's another product we developed that you certainly could have access to, and you get an opportunity to see how those sessions went and where we kept our focus. And so you see here on the slide some of the areas of focus that we highlighted during those ALC sessions, and these are the recorded versions that you could see including that live demonstration with Jackson that we talked about earlier. So unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to get to all of the content that we had prepared. It's why we wanted your help in prioritizing the direction we took the presentation. You do have available to you the entire slide deck, including those other topics such as the needs assessment, as well as our evaluation, where you can see some of our results. If you have any questions after attending or looking through our slide deck, please don't hesitate to reach out to all of us. We're very happy to be of any service. We know that these are tough times for all of us, and we're just wanting to do as much as we can to support the workforce. And so our contact information can be found at the end of the slide deck. It can also be found on the handout, where you have all of the URLs to access our products. And so both Jen and I's contact information is in the footer of that handout, and you can reach out by email, and we would, again, be happy to support you in whatever way we can. So with that, we just want to thank you for your time and wish you all the very best. We know that we're all in this together trying to do what we can for the workforce. So thank you for spending this hour with us and sharing in our collaboration. Have a wonderful rest of the conference, and hopefully we'll see you in person in the future at one of these.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.